Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Just Good Game News. Hopefully you watched episode 0 last week. That was something that I prepared before I had left my job at What Culture and before I'd thundered forward with a mix of the Just Good Game show, which includes this, the Just Good Game News, but goes out earlier in the week before going on free feeds on a Saturday. But you can access it on Wednesday if you would like to. If you'd like to go over to patreon.com/Tilford, you can view a whole bunch of membership tiers over there. You can also get involved in the show as well, submit some topics, and craft the show itself alongside me, which has been very fun to put together. The community is coming together phenomenally well over on the Discord. It's been very fun, and I love it. But yeah, my other venture is Casual Wrestling Fan. That's on YouTube, and then there's the Title Banter podcast as well. So if you like gaming, you like wrestling, one or the other, or both, go get stuck into the Patreon or get stuck into the podcasts if you just search those names, Just Good Game Show and Title Banter Pod. For this one though, just like episode 0, I'm going to be rolling together various different categories for the Just Good Game News show, which comprise some money-saving deals, some recommended titles, some overlooked games, all the breaking news that I think will make you feel good as you learn about it. And I'm going to throw those things together. We've got a tips and tricks section. We got some trivia as well. The response to this last week was awesome as my throat tries to give out on me. And it's just an honor to be seen by you. So thank you so much for watching the first episode, episode 0 rather. This is the first episode. And all feedback is welcome. The feedback that was in the comments last week, I massively appreciate. I read every single comment, and people seem to like the idea of this positive news show and the format that I've chosen, which is just to throw all my favorite things into one big video. So yes, enjoy. So I'm going to be calling this first section the breaking feel-goods, the breaking news, that they're also a feel-good story, positive stuff. The biggest of which being that Darksiders 4 is real. Now, I know I'm a few days late on this, so please forgive me, but it is one of my favorite franchises. Darksiders, I feel like I've grown up with, and it's interesting when you look into the reality of THQ. Like, a lot of people will know them these days as THQ Nordic, but the whole thing with Darksiders was that it was started under the original THQ, and the initial plan, because it's helmed by a comic book artist called Joe Madureira, who I totally recommend. I think he's a great force in comic books, in art in general. He's helmed various different games, and at the minute he's working over at Gunfire Games. But the whole thing with THQ and Joe Madureira and Darksiders is they started this new franchise that I would say is one of the nearest things to a Legacy of Kain spiritual sequel that you can possibly get, just in terms of the way that the way that all the characters are framed, the way they talk to each other, the interactions and everything. I just like that sort of regality that comes with all the different realms, all the different interactions that are happening between the gods and the monsters and the people that are trying to keep everybody at bay and all that kind of stuff. Just a really cool franchise. And the initial plans for that were to do, or as far as I know anyway, was to do 4 different games with each one, 4 games. Each one would have a different main character. And they managed that. Darksiders 1, you play as War. The whole thing's about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and something that goes horribly wrong at the beginning of Darksiders 1, that main character, War, main character of the first game, War, gets blamed for, and then the entire saga has been trying to get back up to that point in the timeline so we can actually go forward. Like, the very end of Darksiders 1 ends on a tease for the next game, but then Darksiders 2, you play as Death, but it's set in the past. You get right back up to that timeline. Then you did Darksiders 3, you play as Fury. Again, it's like events that happen simultaneously, and then Darksiders 4 we never got because THQ went under, and so it wasn't until Nordic Games stepped in, they revived THQ. That's why they're called THQ Nordic now, and part of that was doing Darksiders Genesis, which was like the revival of the Darksiders IP. And then that 4th game didn't have a single main character. It also played completely differently. It's like a top-down Diablo style game, but you play as War in that game and Strife. And Strife is like more of like a firearms character, and they work really well together. The banter between War and Strife is awesome. Again, the games are really well written, but we never got that Strife game. And so, that was back in like 2022 or something. And then very recently, THQ Nordic got out and said, we are doing the actual Darksiders 4. And part of the official release for that is saying that you will be playing as each of the horsemen, which is awesome. Like, they've obviously already got the movesets worked out. We've got like 15, almost 20 years worth of games to pull from. When you think about how far the series has come, maybe I'm misremembering how long I've been a Darksiders fan, but I feel like that was like 2011 or something. Been a while. But yeah, like we're finally getting Darksiders 4. I feel like this franchise is like the cult classic of all cult classic franchises, and I would recommend people go check it out if you haven't already. The game should be super cheap by now. They're very fun, you know. Darksiders, and each game has like a different kind of tinge to it as well. Like Darksiders 1 is like a Zelda tribute. There's a lot of different dungeons to explore, really well executed dungeons, different puzzles, and puzzle solutions that are very Zelda-like in their execution. Darksiders 2 is a way bigger game with like a loot system, which I know that term is kind of poison these days, but it's done really well, and you're always getting unlocks and upgrades, different things that you can have Death wear. Death himself is written really well. He's really fun, just a very like sardonic kind of character. Great power-ups, awesome animation across the board. Darksiders 3, they tried an interesting pivot. They tried to make a Souls game, or something that was influenced by Souls, with like specific, like bonfire style checkpointing, and the character over the camera over the character's shoulder, and everybody kind of hated that. It feels like Darksiders 3 was the best they could do at the time, but it is the most stripped back, and yeah, it just is the one that's maybe the least recommendable. But I still think that overall, it is the cult classic of cult classic franchises. There are so many different genres and other franchises that they're pulling from, and I just love the overall execution. Like the art direction here is outstanding, and I always love a really good in-depth lore, or a fun lore, where you've got all this different nomenclature to talk about, all these different nouns and terminologies and everything, and all the stuff about the Four Horsemen, going up against the Charred Council and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool, man, and I love me some Darksiders. So I've spent a good few minutes on this, but it's because I'm very happy about Darksiders coming back, and like I said, there's very little information available for it, but if they can pull off a 4-character game where you're jumping between all these different people, all these different power sets, and have all of them talking to each other, like pull off the group dynamic that we thought we were going to get after the first Darksiders 1, I think it could be phenomenal, and I think the whole series together will hopefully then be encapsulated as a must play. Like they're just such good fun games. Like especially today, they do totally work as like throwback titles. Obviously, given when they were first released, but if you play them now, I think you'll be impressed by the animation, how fun and immediate the combat is. Throwing a car at someone's face as war, that stuff is good fun. I love me some Darksiders, man. Next one down is the Virtua Fighter footage, and I wanted to include this because I feel like Sega are handling their properties incredibly well. Like there's this whole Sega revival thing that's going on. I don't know if it has a specific name to it, and I did mention it over on the What Culture podcast a little bit as well. But you've got like Shinobi Art of Vengeance, which I'm going to get to a bit later, in this podcast. But you've got Shinobi Art of Vengeance looking absolutely stunning. You've got Crazy Taxi coming back. The leaked gameplay for that looks pretty promising. I think if you nail the arcade physics of that thing, I think it'll be quite enjoyable. Also, the fetch quest genre is exploding thanks to Death Stranding, so there's a chance that they can get it on that. And then you've got Golden Axe coming back, and Virtua Fighter. I think there's another one as well, but I always forget the full roster. But either way, they are dedicating themselves to doing a whole bunch of classic IP that are coming back and seemingly better than ever. Virtua Fighter, like the footage that they put out, I thought looked incredible, just so smooth, so frame perfect. And I kind of agree with the general sentiment online that, in a world of different fighting games that are getting increasingly over the top, like Tekken is just an over the top anime at this point. Like I love me some Tekken, but Tekken 8, like, story spoilers, whatever, the final fight in that game ends on, or part of it takes place with like 2 specific characters fighting on like a meteor falling out of the sky. Also, the way that they brought back Heihachi was to have him headbutt a meteor to remember who he is after an Amnesiac storyline that lasted about half a year or something. It's just, like Amnesiac plus him dying in Tekken 7. But still, Tekken overall feels like this insane anime. And there's a part of me that would, that welcomes the Virtua Fighter approach. Like, I wasn't a huge VF guy when it was initially releasing. Like, I remember the one on PS2 being a big deal. But still, like, I remember that series back in the day, playing as Jeffrey on the PS1 and playing in the arcades as well. And so I think that whole franchise's, signature trait of just going like, okay, it's not about the flash and the panache and, like insane over the top moves. It is about connecting one foot to a face, frame perfect. And in the most recent footage that they've put out, which I'll include in the video, is, it shows, like zooms in and shows like how close these things are getting. It reminds me so much of the old EA Fight Night games, and how, like I said, like pixel precise they were, and how incredible the knockout cams were. I miss that stuff. Like those original Fight Night games, again on PS2, when you landed a haymaker and it showed the guy's face, like all the skin cheeks flying around. That was a great feeling. Like that was awesome. And it's only been the most recent couple of UFC games that have brought that stuff back. Like I don't think many of the boxing games have. Like I feel like that's such a satisfying way to do a knockout. But yeah, Sega seem to be on track to do Sega seem to be on track, and they are doing quite a good job of bringing back the various IP that people associate with them. And I feel like they're walking a nice line between how someone like a Nintendo might do something and taking all the right lessons from Atari, who are themselves in the middle of a whole revival, back from the dead, Phoenix from the ashes style thing. Again, they are resurrecting a lot of their IPs. Like we got a new Missile Command in 2025. There's not been an actual new one of them in like 50 years or something. The next thing down is if you're an Assassin's Creed Black Flag fan, you can further be excited that the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake has been mentioned yet again. Got to be one of the worst kept secrets in the industry right now. But the most recent thing is the voice actor Matt Ryan, the guy that voices Edward Kenway. Apparently he was at a recent fan convention. He didn't realize he was being filmed, and he was talking to a fan about beating the original game, and his response was, well, maybe you'll have to beat it again. And then he said he couldn't reveal anything else. That led to Ubisoft suing him for breaching his NDA. So clearly, dude is under wraps for, saying ostensibly that the Black Flag remake does exist after it's leaked various times across the last couple of years. There was then a follow-up from him where he was asked again from another fan, and he literally just said, like, I can't say anything. Like, he's like, I got in trouble last time. I can't say anything. I just need to move away from this thing. So it seems like, it seems like Ubisoft didn't actually follow through with the suing, which is good. But it does throw another giant log on the blazing inferno fire that is the Black Flags, leaked in the first place, and that the remake does exist, which I do think is an interesting conversation on like where Ubisoft are at. They kind of do need an easy win. Something like Black Flag would be a good one to go with. But at the same time, it reminds me of the version that we got at the turn of the previous generation. There was a version of Black Flag that was on 360 and PS3, and then there was the one that was on PS4 and Xbox One. But all that did, as far as I could tell, other than I guess touch up some of the frame rates, was add different weather effects in terms of, you had more dense rain in certain scenes. I remember the side-by-sides back in like 2013, 2014, just thinking like, this is not, in my opinion, worth the extra money to try and get the next gen one, being that I already had the 360 one. So I am curious what you do to Black Flag. Like, that is one of the holy grail games in that franchise, largely because it deviates away from, the rigidity of the original approach to different missions, like the stealth, the combat, and things like that. Black Flag kind of just blew it all wide open. It was like, here's your ship, you can go sailing, you can do all these other exploratory missions. The actual location was absolutely gorgeous. I think Black Flag still holds up pretty well. And I will throw in that the version on Switch is incredible. Like, not even on Switch 2. Like, the original Switch version of Black Flag is an awesome port. Like, it runs really well, it looks beautiful. And obviously that thing, like I said, originally was on the 360, so there's no real reason why the Switch wouldn't be able to keep up. But we have seen that system chug. And in regards to, if you want some good Assassin's Creed business and you don't want to wait for the remake, Black Flag is actually surprisingly intact. Next item down is Metroid Prime 4 still coming in 2025. Now, the conversation around this is kind of interesting. There's a whole thing with Nintendo said back in March that the game was coming later this year, and they've used it quite heavily alongside the Switch 2. But then since the Switch 2 came out, they haven't really done any follow-ups with additional gameplay footage or whatever. And it started happening where signs of the game, dropping soon, were all over the place. There was like some advertising in the London Underground, London in the UK, where different posters were on the side of the tube, or the tube station. And then that led to this whole conversation around like, oh, is it actually, is it coming out soon? There was a whole other rumor that did the rounds about the game being delayed and pushed into 2026. But most recently, at a fan expo in Canada, there was a statement put out by Nintendo where they were reeling off all these different games that are coming to Switch 2, including like Hades 2 or whatever. And they did mention Metroid Prime 4 also coming in 2025. So at least from the horse's mouth, this game is in theory coming later this year, even though they don't seem to want to put an actual stamp on it. There is that wider conversation on the Nintendo Directs as well. Like, we just had a Nintendo Direct third-party event, which was fine. It didn't really blow me away or anything. I was kind of expecting a little bit, I was expecting something to be like, oh my God, they got that on the Switch. Like maybe the Gears of War thing that I was hoping for last week. I thought that might happen. And then as I'm recording this, they've just announced that they're doing an indie stream on Thursday. So by the time the video for this goes out, it'll already have happened and we'll know what additional indie games are coming to the Switch too. But it does feel like Nintendo are kind of playing a weird game at the minute. Like, you've got the standard thing with their reputation where, you know, they'll get to it whenever they're ready. They won't be pushed. They won't be forced to do something. They don't care or whatever. But the way these things are rolling out, when you lead so strongly with Metroid Prime 4 and then you don't do the follow-up, to make sure everybody knows when it's coming and what version it's going to be and whatever. I think that you could probably do a little bit more clarifying that stuff. But at least, you know, from them, it's still coming in 2025 and it still looks absolutely gorgeous. I still think that for the most part, it looks pretty feature complete Switch 2 to Switch 1. This is going to be one of the big flagship games to celebrate, you know, over on the Switch 2. So here's to seeing more of Metroid Prime 4 as soon as possible. Next section, it is time for the game spotlight. This week, I want to highlight Ninja Gaiden Ragebound and Shinobi Art of Vengeance, two games that are absolutely spectacular. I've just been playing them right next to each other. Shinobi, only the demo for now. I haven't got access to the full game, but that is coming out on the 28th of August. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, though, what an incredibly tight, super acrobatic and fun and rewarding and immediate action platformer. It's not, you know, it is just straight up linear. Like, you are just going left to right. It's not a Metroidvania, which I think sometimes people associate this style of graphics with a Metroidvania framework. It is a lot more just pick a mission, dive in, 10, 15 minutes or so, and then you'll back out again with a really good level of difficulty. Like, the original Ninja Gaidens were absolutely brutal and complete and very cheap, I would say, as well. Obviously, you could learn them. People got through them eventually, whatever. But I still feel like if you were going to try and pull something like that today, it would end up in the realm of like 1001 Spikes or Volgar the Viking, where it's a game that you endure. It's not something that you play. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is just super fun. Like I said, it's very acrobatic. You're bouncing off enemies. You can do these specific boost attacks where you can bounce off projectiles, and it's just a very kinetic game, like sliding, different attacks coming out of the slides, things like that. The boss fights really stand out as well. I feel like the boss fights usually take me sort of, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 times to learn what the hell's happening, and then if I slow my pace and just take a minute, and then I can get through it. There was one that took me like 20 tries because I just kept rushing in. You know when you get annoyed and you just rush back in, try and fight the thing faster than clearly you're supposed to be, and you just end up losing anyway. That was the whole thing. But both these games, I think, are awesome. Like, what a month of ninjas it is. I'm going to get to that later in this video as well. One of the deals of the week this week is a ninja-based game. But still, if we're talking about, you know, games of the week kind of thing, for me, it's Ninja Gaiden Ragebound so far. You know, things like Tales of the Shire have just come out. The Demon Slayer game just came out. The sequel to the Hinokami Chronicles 1. But it is Ninja Gaiden that stands out for me. And then Shinobi, Art of Vengeance, again, part of the Sega Revival project. I feel like Shinobi is like just a power fantasy. Like, as much as the original games, especially things like Shinobi 3, had like a higher degree of cheapness and a certain mentality that was like, you need to remember all the beats of this level and then do it all in one go. Like, very much the Sega of the time, you know, things like Comic Zone were impossible to get through until you memorize the entire level. And that game was incredibly short, so they had to find some way to extend it. But in Shinobi's case, for Art of Vengeance, it's just, you're just decimating dudes. Like, you're just exploding them, sending them flying, doing all these incredible, over-the-top, visually stunning moves, and it just feels great. Like, this is the Streets of Rage 4 team, so the art style is very similar. It's kind of like a painterly sort of look. It's a little bit like what Street Fighter 4 kicked off in Street Fighter 4. It's a little bit like what Street Fighter 4 kicked off in terms of, you know, adding those sort of like inky trails to the ways that characters move, so it all looks like they've just been freshly painted. I think it's a great art style, and I think Dotemu, the devs, like, are really starting to come into their own by applying it to something as completely different as Shinobi coming off Streets of Rage 4. But yeah, man, just thoroughly impressed. Like, it's funny going between the two of them, how similar they are in terms of the setup, and then how different they are in terms of the flow of gameplay, but both have such great pockets that you can get into in a gameplay sense. You know, especially on the Shinobi side, like, you really do, you start taking on entire rooms of enemies, just doing all these crazy moves, flying knees, throwing the shurikens out, unleashing like big torrents of flame that are just like the original game. I was just thoroughly impressed. Like, I'm a big Shinobi guy anyway, or a big ninja guy. So I was a big fan of that. Contextually, I'm a big Shinobi guy, the games, and I'm a big ninja guy in general. I also wanted to mention WWE 2K25. That came out right at the end of July on Switch. It's been out on other consoles, I think since like March or May or something. But this version, you know, they delayed it on Switch. There's a whole history of the WWE 2K games on, you know, the original Switch being absolutely on fire. the one that was the most on fire, I think, was 2K20. But that game, actually, maybe it was 2K18 was the last one on Switch, and 2K20 was the one that was absolutely on fire on other systems. But the whole thing with the way these games are developed, they actually switched developers overall. I think Visual Concepts is the name of the dev that came in. 2K pretty much just gave the franchise to the creators of the NBA series and just said, here you go, we don't know anymore, it's on fire, please put it out and please make something else. And there was a whole load of developer interviews from people who were originally working on the games, saying that they wished them well, but like they were moving on. And it's taken this long, you know, it's taken like 5 years or even more than that for a WWE 2K game to emerge on a Switch again. And thankfully, genuinely, like I feel like this is such a crazy sentence, but every time I play this, I am genuinely blown away. Thankfully, this thing is like an absolute miracle. Like, for as much as, you know, we talk about games that show off what a Switch 2 can do, or we talk about games that show off what a console can do, I think this is a way better showcase of what a Switch 2 can do than Mario Kart World or Donkey Kong Bonanza. And I know that's insane, but the sheer level of, you know, the technology that's on display, the sheer fidelity to the rendering that's there, the fact that all the wrestlers develop sweat as they get through a match, and the scale of some of the arenas that you can put people in, and it just sticks to a 60 FPS frame rate. It just plays perfectly. It's also worth throwing into the conversation that if you're more of a casual wrestling fan, lol, go check out the YouTube channel, then you might not have, you know, maybe you stayed with the games, but you didn't stay with the shows. Like maybe you kept playing the SmackDown games or SmackDown versus Raw or whatever. I think that the last really big 2K game was like 2K13, or the one that had CM Punk on the cover. That was, I feel like, a one that went a bit wider, where your average person knew what it was, knew what the gameplay was like. But like I said, that run at the end of the 2010s and the beginning of the 2020s just became such an off-putting time to try and keep up with these games. So it's worth saying that since the Switch in developer and the overall, you know, the execution on this particular game, I think these games are awesome. Like, I just want to kind of fly the flag for a little bit. I do think they're great. I'm not sponsored by them whatsoever, but I have a great time playing them, and I think it's worth just kind of saying that they walk a really good line between the simulation aspects of like putting a match on for the audience. You get scored as the match goes on. You want to have like you know, kickouts at the last minute during a pinfall, or you want to go for a move off the top turnbuckle. You know, you want to do all these crazy over the top moves, and all of it gets tracked. You can see in the top side of the screen, it tells you like last minute kick out, or like, you know, the referee goes down or whatever. So you're putting on this show for the audience, which is obviously what they're doing in real life. And that feels great. But then you also have like one other foot in the arcade mentality of the old school SmackDown games, where you are just doing increasingly over the top ridiculous moves, really heavy hitting slams, actual punches, kicks, and all those sorts of things, and actually fighting someone like a fighting game. Like, the difficulty and the AI is actually really good in this game. And yeah, I was quite surprised when I started getting back into wrestling back in 2022, and I picked up 2K22, got into AEW, I should say. I wasn't watching WWE. I ended up getting the game just to install all the AEW characters using the creation suite. I've since watched a little bit more of WWE. That's why I bought 2K25. But when I got back in, I bought the game, and I was like, oh, this is like such a step up. Like, you know, my assumption was that it wasn't going to play very well at all, but I think they really have found a good groove with these games. And they're also content rich now as well. Like, you do get like story modes, creation suites, you know, like obviously all the different match types. They have all the different eras of WWE, like going all the way back to like the 80s, and the arenas that go alongside them. Like, I am thoroughly impressed by the what they have in 2K25. And yes, it comes with a hefty price tag, but that's what I've been playing. And then, like I said, that only came out like about a week ago. I do think it's a bit of a miracle on Switch too, and thoroughly recommendable. And like I said, if you want to see what a Switch can do, every time I boot the thing on and look at it, it looks like I'm just holding like a PS4 game or a PS4 Pro game or something. It is genuinely very, very impressive. The next section is overlooked games of the week. Now, these don't need to be brand new games. I just want to shout out things that feel like they deserve their flowers. We've got a whole channel dedicated to this thing over on the Discord, where people can shout out different titles that they've grown up with or things that they want to mention. They can be new titles as well, but we had so many submissions for this, and if you want to get involved, just, you know, search my name, search Scott Tailford on Discord, go join the Discord, or head over to the patreon.com/Tailford, and you can see all the different ways that you can get involved with the show every week and the podcast every week as well, because the Just Good Game News is only one part of the Just Good Game show. The Just Good Game show always goes out earlier in the week on a Wednesday, and then the news is on a Friday, and then the full show goes on free feeds on a Saturday. So if you want to get involved early and get and enjoy the community that is coming together, you know, as we go forward, which I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, please do those things. My pick is Shotgun Cop Man. A game that I think has been out since like May. It's been out for a lot longer on PC, but it's finally on Switch. I was just having to search for demos the other day on the Switch eShop, and I noticed there was a demo for it. It's published by Devolver. It's, you kind of know what you're getting with a Devolver game, even if they're just the publisher and not the developer. But it is that sort of quirky approach, like a quirky sense of humor. Shotgun Cop Man is a great side-scrolly shooting game where every time you blast the shotgun, it propels you in the opposite direction. So you have all these like momentum mechanics where you're trying to bounce off the ground. You can also use your pistol to do a smaller jump because there is no jump button. There's only shooting. But you're trying to blast yourself through these levels, take out all the enemies, get through some of the puzzle sections, and avoid some parts of the environment while shooting in the right direction and planning for where the momentum's going to take you, and then shoot the next person and try and get to the finish. It's just a super tight, super arcadey kind of game, and you can play it in nice little bursts. Like I find the levels to be the perfect length. Soundtrack's good fun as well, like quite a dingy sort of almost dark synth soundtrack. Not necessarily with like great beats, but it does very much contribute to it. And the sense of excuse me. And the sense of humor in the game as well is awesome. Like you're pretty much just an invulnerable Terminator style guy, RoboCop style guy, going after Satan, who the first time you see him in hell just tells you to F off, and it's like, sure. But it's if we're talking about gameplay as king games, then I was thoroughly impressed by Shotgun Cop Man, and it was what I played all the way down to the Battlefield event last week, and all the way back up again. It's just awesome, just super addictive, and it's been a blast literally going through that alongside the likes of Ninja Gaiden. To me, there's something about those really sublime, 2D games that just are so immediate. There's something you can just jump right into, have a great 10, 15 minutes or whatever, and they're just so Moorish. Like, give me one more level, I'll just keep getting through it. So yeah, man, Shotgun Cop Man, something that I don't think looks great in footage. I think it looks a bit too like minimal, to a fault. It reminds me actually of N+, that was on Xbox 360's Live Arcade. And shout out to you if you remember N+. That was a game where you played as like a ninja, like a stick ninja, and you would be getting through all these environments that were all very simplistic, but you had to avoid everything in a pixel precise kind of way, dodging missiles, dodging different threats that were coming your way. It reminds me a little bit like that, where maybe if all you saw was the gameplay, you would think there wasn't much to it, but the actual feel is the thing that really carries it. In terms of the games for this week, though, I wanted to shout a bunch of these out because we had so many submissions. King Muttley says Inertial Drift. Inertial Drift is awesome. This is one of the most unique driving games that I've ever played, and it was the kind of thing that was so addictive and so arcadey that I just blitzed it. It was like a whole weekend with the thing. But the unique thing with the game is that you're controlling driving with both analog sticks. So obviously, usually in driving games, you steer with the left, and usually the right is like a camera control or something like that. In this game, they both go towards drifting. Like you're steering with the left stick, and then you're kind of finessing the particular of the drift with the right stick. I know it sounds really weird, but you end up flying into corners, flying into all these different tracks so fast, and then being able to whip both the sticks left and right as you go through all these different chicanes, and it just feels like such a unique way to play a driving game, and such an immediately satisfying way to do it as well. Like being able to take something that is one part of the overall driving experience and make that like a bigger overall component. I was thoroughly impressed by this. I have to imagine that Inertial Drift would be quite cheap these days if you wanted to go back and pick it up. Wholesome Chaotic says Gotham Knights, which I'll forever flying the flag for Gotham Knights. That game is awesome. It obviously was a product of a bit of a sour development. There was the whole thing with, the game was meant to be a live service title, and then they released it anyway. There was so much backlash around it that most people just ended up staying away from it. And even if you pick it up today, you can literally see in the menus the bits and pieces of the game that would have been reserved for the live service, the different currencies that you would have been able to buy, the different crafting schematics, things like that. But also, you can completely ignore them. There's a great story here with great characters and really fun, crunchy combat. I also love the overall structure of the game, which is like gets across the idea that you are looking after Gotham. You're basically going out on patrol every night. You can choose these different missions that you want to do every night, and then you're going back to the Belfry. This is a spin-off from the Arkham series. It's not in the Arkham canon, as far as I know. There was a whole thing with that where they couldn't seem to decide whether it was an Arkham sequel or not. And in the end, I think it is just its own separate thing. But the variety of characters that you get to play as, I think, are awesome. Like I said, that everyone is like fully voiced. The chemistry between the group is really good. You have this whole back and forth between like Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, and Jason Todd, Red Hood. I just think it's a cool game, and I think it was completely overlooked. And yeah, you get the Bat Cycle to terror on Gotham in. It's just sweet. So yeah, I totally back Wholesome Chaotic mentioning that they had a lot of fun with it. The next overlooked game is from Soul, who on Discord shouts out Spartan Total Warrior, said they played that game to death, running into hordes of enemies, kicking ass was awesome. Predator Concrete Jungle, dude. Yes. Got pretty mid to poor reviews, but I just loved it. Spent hours stalking people feeling like the real Predator. And number 3, Shadow of Rome. Honestly, I've never played a game like it. Combat was brutal and satisfying with plenty of variety. Just a shame about Octavianus's stealth missions. Predator Concrete Jungle, dude, hell yeah. That thing should be on modern systems. I know it hasn't aged very well. Actually, I did download it on Steam Deck. And it's the first few missions that I think are awesome, especially the one when you're just unleashed in like a corner of the city and you can just string dudes up to billboards and just do Predator stuff, skin them and stuff. That's fun. But the later missions when you're fighting the xenomorphs, I think it starts to fall down a little bit. But it was still really fun for the time. And we should just get more Predator games. Like the amount of stuff, that Fox are doubling down on, Fox Disney, in regards to, we've got Predator, Killer of Killers, Prey, and there's another Predator movie coming out, and Predator Badlands. The IP is being treated very well right now, but we don't have any game alongside it. So if there is something, I would assume that if something was coming, it's already in production now. But I guess we'll see. ScubaSun13 says Neon Abyss. I've sadly not played Neon Abyss, but other fans can shout out down in the comments on YouTube. The world famous Hoss Daddy mentions Freedom Fighters, which is a great pull. The game that I feel like even IO Interactive have forgotten about, the developers of Hitman. Freedom Fighters, I don't know if it was their very first game, but one of the very first games that they did. IO Interactive, only obviously known for Hitman, especially now with the World of Assassination stuff, and all the ways that Hitman 2016 went forward, but they did also make... Oh my god, my throat will not let me get through this sentence. They did also make the Kane and Lynch games, which are probably best avoided, and Freedom Fighters, which is an awesome, super atmospheric game where you play as like a fireman and you've got like a wrench and you're just trying to survive. I remember absolutely loving that game. I don't think I finished it as a kid, but I remember loving the combat in it. And I feel like IO Interactive have had a weird relationship with shooting combat in their games. Like they end up kind of over implementing the ragdoll in quite a lot of their titles. But there was something about Freedom Fighters back on the PS2 that really stood out. And obviously as a dev, they would go in a completely different direction over time. They would only double down on Hitman and go through enough back and forths with different staff departures and the studio itself fully committing to Hitman eventually once they managed to break free of Square Enix. But still, Freedom Fighters is awesome. That's another title that they should put on the PlayStation Classics. Like that's I would say that's regarded as a PlayStation Classic, even though it wasn't the first party release, but still very much an awesome game. Willie Araya says Baba Is You, which is a really great little puzzle game. It's on Steam /PC and it's on Switch as well. It's like a word-based puzzle game where you're making different sentences up as you try and get through all these different levels, and there's different permutations to what words you can make. And every time you change a sentence, it changes the rules of the game itself. So you want to push different words into, it'll be something like door is, and if you can find the word unlocked and then slide that into place, then you can go through the door. Very unique idea, and it's something that I've never seen replicated quite so well. I think it'll be very hard to do it in 3D or anything other than the top-down 2D approach that they have here. But just a really great idea, and I have to imagine that if you played Baba now, it will be super cheap. The next section is tips and tricks. Now, last week I mentioned a tip for Death Stranding 2, where if you put down a blood grenade and shoot through it, you can turn any bullets that you're firing through into MP bullets, multi-purpose bullets. That led to a community member, Willie Araya, doing a phenomenal job at putting together a ton more tips and tricks over on the Discord. So you can go look at them. They're all spoiler-free, which is awesome. So if you're maybe haven't finished Death Stranding 2, maybe you're milking every last part of that game. So I know a lot of people who end up, if it clicks with you, you just want to do everything. You can still go get stuck into that and maybe find something out about the game that you didn't know. For this week, though, I'm going to mention Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. I found that, over time, it serves up, like the structure of it's quite interesting. Like over time, it opens up a lot more than you might expect. Like you have this linear approach in terms of the level design, but after you get through the first couple of missions, it opens up and starts giving you this like side quests, like they're called Spec Ops missions. And then you can go to various different levels, you can replay them, get different grades, and explore and find other things. I found that some of the best techniques were in the side missions, were in the Spec Ops missions, and not only were they in those missions, but they were hidden in those missions behind certain breakable walls or behind some of the more acrobatic puzzle gauntlets that you have to do while playing as Komori. Some of these are insanely hard. Where you like, we talk about pixel perfect, but some stuff. There's a one in like the second Spec Ops mission where you're playing as Komori, and you've just got to chain together an insane amount of jumps with, whilst also throwing projectiles so that they trigger other parts of the environment to get all the way through. But I would say that when you do unlock the map and you can just go take on the next set of 3 missions, you get your choice of the next of 3 missions, go in the Spec Ops mode and do at least the first couple of those missions, because you will unlock some scrolls that will help you. There's some health restorative stuff in there that I found quite valuable during a boss fight. And ultimately, yeah, I just think those missions are worth doing. If you like the pace of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, the Spec Ops missions are where all of that is just cranked up. Like, what an absolute blast that game's engine is. So yeah, man, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Also, Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think a lot of people are still playing through that. It's one of the best games of the year. Having now mopped up a ton of the side stuff, like, initially I blitzed through it because I wanted to get through enough of it to do the review that was over on What Culture, and then I went back and started mopping up all the collectibles and everything else. I would say that you are better off going through, like, kind of doing it the way I did it, not necessarily rushing as much, but get through that game and get all the transformations. Like, I'll not spoil all of the transformations. Only 3 of them have been in the trailers so far. There's a couple more. But the thing that I found is that, like, once you have all those transformations, you have way more command over the environment. Specifically, the ostrich has already been in the trailers. And there's one more that you get right at the very end. The ostrich and this one that you get at the end are fundamentally traversal-based specials. They're fundamentally traversal-based transformations in terms of the abilities that you get. And I would say something like the ostrich's glide is, like, invaluable. From, climbing all the way up the side of one part of the environment and then gliding all the way over. Once you do the thing where you end up finding out where the fossils are, where the bananas are, or whatever, by talking to the NPCs or finding treasure chests, once you've got all your dots set up on the map and you just want to mop everything up, I found that those transformations, especially the endgame one, was extremely helpful. And you wouldn't have that if you spent the time doing that world by world by world until you got to the end. I would actually say that you're a bit better off doing the main thread and then doubling back and doing everything else. So if anything, it makes the game last a bit longer, and you'll have, every single ability to use on every single level. What a game Donkey Kong Bonanza is. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. Next up, it is 3 game deals. 3 game deals and 3 game deals. Maybe that's the same thing. In my head, it's slightly different. But it is the month of ninjas, so I'm shouting out Mark of the Ninja Remastered. This is a game that is currently on sale. Let me find my notes. For £3.99 on the PlayStation Network until the 13th of August. So you've only got a few days to snap it up. But Mark of the Ninja is an outstanding game. If you're trying to scratch the itch of what something like Shinobi's going to be doing later in the month, or you just like the idea of the 2D side-scrolling ninja with all the different powers, etc., Mark of the Ninja is great. It's way more stealth-focused than the action style of Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi, but it's just so beautifully animated. It's made by a dev studio called Klei, Klei, who made, you might remember if you're an Xbox 360 fan, Shank. There was an Xbox arcade game called Shank and Shank 2, and also Don't Starve. You probably know Don't Starve. But again, that game... that studio has such a great art style, such a phenomenal signature art style. I'm blanking on the dude's name. Jeff Akala, I think Jeff Akala is their lead artist. And I think he designed some really great looking characters, and the sense of movement that you have in Mark of the Ninja, where you are literally slinking through the shadows, like Penta style, which is awesome. And like all the different moves that you get, the ways you can take enemies out, the different stealth kills that you can do, you can hang off the rooftops or whatever. The remaster also adds a commentary track. I remember things like that standing out. But yeah, it's just, as a full package, I cannot recommend it enough, especially in this glorious month of ninjas. The next deal down is Sherlock Holmes Crimes and Punishments, a game that's on sale for £3.37 over on the Switch store. Now that's until, I think, the 17th? 19th. So you've got a bit longer if you want to grab that. But the Sherlock Holmes games are sweet. Like, I mean, I haven't played one all the way through since Crimes and Punishments. That's back in 2014. But I found it to be like an early game that was really awesome on PS4 back then. Since then, the developers Frogwares have tried all these different ways of kind of like rebooting Sherlock Holmes. They did a whole younger Sherlock thing. They did all these different expansions. They tried a different release schedule. They tried doing like one version of the game that then came with episodic DLC. To me, I thought Crimes and Punishments was a really, really solid game. And one of the best features in it is this whole idea of playing Sherlock's mind. You get to access his mind map. There's stuff that was in the BBC Sherlock as well. And obviously it's a staple of the character. But one thing in this game is that obviously you're investigating all these different crimes, quite a good variety of crimes as well. Whether it's like a botanical mystery, or like this train carriage that doesn't like that seems like it disappeared, like really fun stuff that you would get in the movies or whatever. Yeah, whenever you start piecing together bits of evidence, you can go into Sherlock's mind and you manually can connect the synapses of his brain to produce a deduction. And you can have him deduct the wrong stuff, and you can actually end the missions in the wrong way. You can go with the wrong lead. You can accuse the wrong person or whatever. And I just found it to be a really good like immersive Sherlock game, like a great way of IGN style, making you feel like Sherlock. Apparently it runs very well on Switch as well, which is a nice change. Another one that's worth mentioning is My Friend Pedro. I mentioned this earlier in the video, but My Friend Pedro, and also there's a mobile game version of this as well, that is one of the only mobile games that I would recommend. But My Friend Pedro is on sale for £3.19 over on the PlayStation Store. And it's just a great, I mean, I've mentioned 2D side-scrolling games quite a lot in this. I'm discovering my own trend here. But when the gameplay is this good, I don't think you can complain. And My Friend Pedro is just about, it's almost like a Hotline Miami style game. The soundtrack, for one, in a Hotline comparison, absolutely slaps. Like, it's such a good soundtrack. The album's called Music to Banana 2, because Pedro himself is a floating banana that just exists seemingly in the mind of the guy that you're playing as, who is like a twin pistol toting masked maniac, I guess. But then the gameplay is just a ton of slow motion shooting and acrobatic stuff, like hanging off a zip line as you take out all these dudes in slow mo, doing flip tricks on a skateboard again while you're killing guys, figuring out different ways to get through the levels, bouncing bullets off frying pans in midair to make trick shots. It's just so. I keep saying immediate, but it is just so satisfying and so immediate and so confident as well. And the mobile version is actually spot on as well in terms of a control scheme. I think that actually has a really good way to play it on mobile, where you're sort of dragging your thumb across the screen to catapult your character a bit more forward into the level. And then you're tapping to do the additional hits on top of specific enemies. So even if you want to play this on phones, I would totally recommend it. But yeah, My Friend Pedro for like £3 is a massive steal. My next one down is Swords of Ditto Momo's Curse. That is on sale for £1.49 over on Switch, only until the 17th. So you've got like a week and a bit for that one. But Swords of Ditto is like if Cartoon Network made a game. Just an absolutely beautiful game. Looks like Steven Universe or something like that in terms of like a Cartoon Network art style. The issue with this, when it first came out, it was like 2018 or whatever, the devs went through so many different versions of the game. It was patched so much, they were trying to respond to fan feedback. Like, ultimately, the game is a roguelike. You're sort of spawning in, there's this villain called Momo, and she's in like a big evil tower, and you need to get a bunch of unlocks, get a bunch of upgrades in the open world, but obviously each quadrant of the map is opening up at a different time. Gameplay is top-down Zelda style, like you're attacking in the sort of 4 different directions, and taking on enemies and unlocking stuff that way, going back to the village, unlocking things, gradually progressing the story, every time that you respawn, because you are playing as a lineage of characters, a bit like Rogue Legacy. And so the whole thing with the game, people thought that it was way too punishing, that you were losing too much in between your runs, and you didn't necessarily feel like you were making that much progress. And so they tweaked so many different things for this, and they tried to make it a little bit more palatable. They made it a little bit more easy. They tried to give you more boosts at the beginning, and then eventually they ended up relaunching it with the subtitle of Momo's Curse. And that was the one that was the most feature complete. I mean, the combat's just super chunky. Like you have all these different animations that come off the enemies when you swipe at them. It's just it's almost like if Cartoon Network made a Zelda game. And I just think it's very, very impressive. And so I had an absolute blast going through Swords of Ditto. I also just wanted to throw in, because I always kind of want to take this section of the show to recommend things that are maybe a little bit more overlooked. Obviously, we have the other section for the overlooked games as well. But if I'm going to be recommending deals, then I'm going to be keeping the price down and trying to focus on things that like might surprise you. I do want to throw in though the Doom 26. I just finished Doom 2016 again the other day, so I thought I'd see what price that thing was going for, and it's down to £3. I think it was £3.39. Currently £3.39 on the eShop until August 11th, so it's only for another couple of days. Now I played through the PlayStation 4 version / PS5 version, which obviously runs really well, but I did mop up the prices on the other platforms. £4.79 on PlayStation until the 13th, and it's also down to £2.99 on Xbox, also until the 13th. So yeah, man, if you're hankering for some Doom after the Dark Ages, which I was, then Doom 2016, oh dude, I think that thing has aged phenomenally well. Like, it was always great, But when you go back to it now, like you see the experiments with Eternal, you see the experiments with Dark Ages, and there's something so pure about 2016's Doom. There's just something so immaculate and confident, and just like what a full package that game is. If you've heard about the franchise, you've not played any of them, you're wondering where to start, go with Doom 2016. And now the final section of the Just Good Game News. I want to send you off into the weekend with a nice little piece of gaming trivia, and by the time this show goes out on the Friday afternoon on YouTube, then Mafia the Old Country will also be out. So I thought I'd do a bit of trivia around that. Now, the development of this game is insane. And for me, I'm someone who, I was at What Culture from 2013 onwards. I'm still contributing to What Culture now, but we followed a lot of the development stories and a lot of the development of the game over the years. And it's just been crazy, the whole thing with Mafia 3. Like, in the run-up to Mafia 3 coming out, there were all the conversations around like, oh my God, what's happening to Mafia? It's not as much of a simulation-focused experience. It seems like they're chasing GTA a little bit too much. Mafia 3 I still massively enjoyed. I'd still totally recommend it to this day, but that game, for as much as it was dogged by the fans, was a humongously well-selling title for 2K. I'm sure they announced at the time that it was the fastest-selling game in 2K history or whatever. It just did extremely well. Apparently behind the scenes, the developers, Hangar 13, who were new to Mafia at the time, and then managed to pull off Mafia 3, they were apparently given the choice of whether they wanted to do a new IP or do Mafia 4, and they chose to do a new IP. And apparently that game, it was codenamed Vault, but that game was apparently, according to Bloomberg, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, who does expert reporting, a superhero online multiplayer game, which is insane. That was then in development from 2017 all the way through to 2021. Clearly, they were yet another studio trying to, ape Overwatch and trying to get it on the superhero boom of the late 2010s. I mean, that was still when Marvel was at the absolute height of their powers as well. It was before we'd had Endgame and the potential downfall of the MCU and all that kind of stuff. But still, they pivoted from Mafia into superhero online stuff. The game was codenamed Vault, and it went all the way through. They sort of gave it 4 years to try and get it to work. Apparently, they couldn't agree on how the hell it was actually going to play. There was potential mentions of music-based powers, where you would be attacking characters with music. There's a whole thing. There were licensing rights around getting access to the music itself. And apparently in 2022, eventually 2K had to pull the plug on it because at that point it had lost $53 million overall. So that then reflected very badly on Hangar 13 because obviously they went from Mafia being this big deal, Mafia 3 selling very well, to this thing that they couldn't even get out the door. So that apparently reflected back on them quite badly internally. And the choice was sort of, okay, what the hell do you guys want to do? And then they managed to pivot over to Mafia the Old Country. And when you look into the gameplay trailers, the general reception of the Old Country so far, it does feel like a bit of a stripped back Mafia game. But I do love the fact that they are getting out there and they're mentioning Mafia 1 and 2 a ton. And as I'm recording this, I haven't played Old Country yet. But even in an official capacity, they're mentioning Mafia 1 and 2, that this is a return to that style of game. They really want to get the train back on the tracks. For as well selling as Mafia 3 was, it did deviate gameplay-wise, and you could argue tone-wise as well. It's not really a Mafia story necessarily. It's very much you going on a revenge kick. It's a Punisher game. Like Mafia 3 is the best Punisher game ever made. But 1 and 2 are fundamentally Mafia stories about the families and about the oaths that you swear and the code and all that kind of stuff. And so it seems like that's what Old Country's getting back to. But my overall point and the good thing is that they've been able to turn this stuff around in quite a short time period. It's only been 3 years since the cancellation of Vault, and there would have been different bits and pieces, different things in the works, especially conversationally, internally. But I do champion them for getting this turned around, and I do love the back to basics, approach that Old Country seems to be taking. Like, I think it can be a little bit divisive in terms of, we've got tall grass to hide in for the stealth takedowns, over shoulder shooting, third person stuff. It's a game that from a distance, it can look like we've played it before, but I am absolutely psyched for this thing. I love Mafia 1 and 2. The definitive edition is phenomenal for Mafia 1 if you haven't played it. I think the whole thing is an incredibly solid franchise. It is fascinating how much they've, gone high and then gone low, and then hopefully they're coming back out again. And that is this week's Just Good Game News. As I do mad shaking hand movements, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you have any recommendations for how the show could be instead, different sections or different things that I could get better, let me know what you think. I love putting this stuff together. I've always wanted to do a positive news show for a good few years, to be honest. And it's nice to be able to be in a nice cadence with it. Let me know what you think of the lights and all that. Oh, as I'm punching my microphone. Because I'm going back and forth on how much of an identity different things should have on and filming this. because going forward, I'm going to be doing some live versions of this as well. You can get involved over on the Discord, and if I'm doing that, then either I need to be immaculately on my game, so I'm not going back and forward to my notes that are on this laptop, or you'll know if it's a live one because I'll just be sat here and it'll all be one big thing where I'll have the laptop over there or something. Things that I need to figure out, but I definitely want to do some live podcasts, and I would love it if you'd get involved over on the Discord as well. But once again, thank you so much. Take care of yourselves, have a lovely weekend, and I'll catch you very soon. Goodbye.